Hi, and welcome to the Andy Gorman Golf One Putt podcast. I'm here with Gareth Shaw. We're talking tour talk. We've been in the deserts this week. So we've been in Arizona with the Waste Management with a handful of crowds, and also in Saudi Arabia, where great wins were had by Brooks Koepka and Dustin Johnson with quite different stats, which we'll talk about, along with the return to some kind of form of Jordan Spieth. Looking forward to the following week's golf, which is none in Europe. We're having a week off, but heading to Pebble Beach, the iconic venue that is. And we're also talking a little bit about putting grips, i.e. how you hold it and why we do it. Look forward to catching up with you on the other side. See you in a moment. Hi Gareth, how are you doing?
Yeah, really good, Andy. How's yourself? How's your neck, more importantly? You've been injured.
Yeah, picked up an injury. I wouldn't mind it. Well, I do know how I've done it. Yeah, sat in front of a computer isn't the lifestyle of a golf pro. Mm-hmm. So yeah, all the upper back, rhomboids, scapula, all around that area. It's tightened up and it triggered into the neck. So it's a little bit better. A bit of chiropractor crunching over the weekend, Friday. It can knock you about, as it did. But, sometimes you've got to go, what is it? No pain, no gain. So, yeah, a bit of treatment. It's getting better. So I don't want to spend too much time sat in front of a computer today. So I'm quite looking forward to, giving it a go again this afternoon because, it's tough. It's tough. I mean, most people understand what an injury is, and most of us have struggled with an injury at some point, and it's debilitating in one sense, but it knocks you sideways in another sense. So, there's a physical element and then there's the psychological element as well, just trying to work through the pain. And, if you're swinging a golf club, sometimes I think you can swing through pain, as long as it's not stopping you from hitting the golf ball. Mm-hmm. The old adage, beware of the injured golfer. Whenever Seve complained about his back, boy, put your money on him. If he had a cold, put your money on him. Let's move on. I could go all wrong on that one.
So busy week. Tour talk is absolutely littered with discussion points.
Yeah.
Where do you want to start?
I'm keen to get started, really. I mean, all round, should we start in the US? All round good. Seeing Jordan Spieth in the final group again. I think it's good for golf. Obviously, it's good for Jordan. Hope he doesn't take too much of a setback. Interesting stats and interesting visuals. Because it's one of those things. It doesn't all look great. But obviously, certainly with putting, if you can square the face and hit it at the right speed, you'll get the ball going in. And he found a week doing that. And he's definitely struggling off the tee, as we know from stats. But just good to see him up there in the mix. And I think that he needs a little bit of confidence. He needs 2 or 3 more tournaments where he can do that. And then, he may flip the switch in the next opportunity. I hope he's going to Pebble, where we're off to the next week. I think it'll be, he needs to keep the momentum going, and that's a big thing. How too often guys get into, I'm only going to play 15 weeks this year. Oh, get a grip and get out there and play a bit of golf. Unless you've got an injury, or you're protecting yourself, like Tiger. And I don't know if he ever played more than 22 weeks in a year. Just get out there and create some momentum and keep going. And as long as you've not got an injury and you're not aggravating anything, you're not going to aggravate your mind if you get into contention all the time. And that's a good thing. So, it's just like, it's just great to see him back. I mean, I really, it's been a long time. So I don't think he's had a top 10 finish. I can't remember where he's finished, but I don't think he's had a top 10 finish the last 4 years.
Yes, no, he hasn't won since 2017. He hasn't won since.
I know, it's ridiculous. So, it's kind of, yeah. I mean, it's kind of scary. Has he won since the Open?
No.
No. I mean, the Open Championship, there's a guy at the height of his career winning the Open Championship, and barely contended since. So, yeah, I mean, I heard a really good thing. I can't remember who said it. I was watching on Friday morning, which would have been the Thursday night's play. And just talking about Spieth and Koepka and, the guys, of course, we'll come to Koepka in a minute with this great win. But, just he, and it may have been Rich Beam, just saying that he got there early, won early in his career, won big early in his career, and didn't know how he did it. So he's got no reference points, and even his coach has been with him, since he was a kid. The reference points of how do you get to win? You win because you're strong mentally. And clearly there's some physical elements to that as well. There's got to be, the amount of talent that you've got. But did he win by talent and a tough mentality, and possibly won before he was ready to understand it all? And now he's got to learn how to understand it. Now, many a good player will disappear, and we've seen that. History's proven that. So they come through, won relatively early, and then never won again. So, I think it's one of those from point of view of, I just want to see Spieth back up there. I think he's a great player. He's terrific short game. He's good fun to watch, because he's just as likely to chip in, as he is get it close. So, if he misses a green, he's birdie material. He's hit to 40 feet. He's birdie material. I mean, you can't, I watched him, like say first round, he was knocking putts in from all over the place. I filmed a bit of it, and just trying to look at what's different in his stroke, and there is some differences, and they're not all good by any means. But if you get the speed right and the face angle right at the point of impact, then the ball's got a chance. So, yeah, it's like I say, it's just good to see him back. Let's move on to Koepka, and just again saying that he enjoys the buzz of playing in front of a crowd, albeit 2,000 of them were on the 16th hole and 3,000 were littered around the other 17 holes on the course. He got a buzz. He gets a buzz from getting an applause, and finds it very difficult to get himself up if there isn't a crowd. Well, hey, we heard that before. He talked about the fact that he couldn't get himself up to play a regular tournament, but he could a major. And hence 4 majors out of his 7, now 8 wins, just goes to show you that there's some merit in that. I think he'd won 4 majors before he won another tournament. So, his ability to be able to win, is becoming proven. Yes, he's been in the doldrums for, a couple of seasons, bit of injury. Was it injury of the body or injury of the mind? Amicable, plain sailing, sort of parting of the waves with Claude Harmon, his coach over the last few weeks, probably the season, and I was thinking about this beforehand. What can he put this down to? The public now knows he doesn't have Claude, catching his back, which is great. And you've cleared the air. The public knows where you stand. And I think the advantage to that then is that he just goes out and plays. He's not thinking technically. He's not thinking, what was it that was said in my ear, 20 minutes, an hour, 2 hours ago. He also then realizes that so many times where I think we've become as players, coaching process as much as the coach does. If a player doesn't understand why he's doing it, and he doesn't recognize the cause and effects at any point, going through the learning process is one thing, but at any point taking ownership of that, then we're going to have some challenges, because we're going to get out on the golf course and we're going like, I don't know how to fix this. Whereas actually out on the golf course, you've got you and your caddy, and that's all you've got to work with, so your team becomes you and caddy, and you in effect then become the audience of one, because nobody else matters. They can't communicate with you. They can't, and I think there's something about that. We sort of, obviously Tiger parting ways with Chris Como a couple of seasons ago, and he goes out and does Tour Championship and the Masters within a matter of weeks, albeit weeks and obviously months then onto the Masters. But he's parted. He's in theory shouldn't be as confident, shouldn't be as comfortable, but he is. So I think with obviously the current scenario as well, it's fine having your coaches travel. But, the coaches, some of the coaches are not getting younger. Well, all coaches are not getting younger, you know what I mean by that. But, we'll see a younger crop of coaching coming through. We always will. But, at what point do coaches come through? Are they coming through with the knowledge in their 40s and 50s, and then they're still there 20 years later in their 60s? And obviously, seeing Butch and, Bob Torrance was still coaching in his 70s. When you see that, a lot of these guys are just going to say, you know what, the invasive nature of travel now, the challenges that go above and beyond just finding a decent hotel to put your head down in, he's going to turn a lot of coaching away from it, especially when we know how successful the remote coaching sides of things are. And I think as long as you can base somewhere, and I think what will happen is ultimately players will end up basing a little bit more. I may be completely wrong with that. Of course, Europe's different because we travel so far. But obviously in the States, players can base. They'll have the coaches in their base location, and you may find coaches sort of settling around their player locations, which ultimately will mean that the players will travel to the coach. Of course, it's a lot easier in the States. A heck of a lot easier to do that in the States, but Europe a little less so. But yeah, the advent of the ability to do remote coaching well, and of course it's a lot easier to do remote coaching very well on putting because there's not a lot of movement. Putting and short game, as in the field shots around the greens, it's I'm doing it at the moment. With the coaching that I'm doing with players out in the Middle East. They've based themselves out there because we can't play golf. That's fine. They're out there getting ready for the season, and we're doing remote coaching on the putting green and on the short game greens. They're setting their iPads up. I'm watching them sitting in front of my TV screen, and we're able to communicate. We're able to make changes. We're able to affect change. Get that ball flight and roll to do what we wanted to do, and and see the immediate effects of it, and not having to be hands on. That's the new school of golf that we're in, and I'm not saying that we don't need our tech, because we will ultimately. I'm not saying that we don't need our studios and sort of ball flight centers and the like, because we do, but we'll become less reliant on it. But the golfer has to understand that this is very doable. It's different, but it's very doable. And I've got some youngsters loving it. At the same time, they're also saying, I prefer it when I'm in the studio, but they're getting a lot more out of that direct focus because it's so one-dimensional, and I just think that will help. And then when a player can become less reliant, or if you think about it now, the coach isn't traveling in the air back home, but the coach is in front of the computer screen and he's sitting watching, the tournament or whatever. And you can contact him straight after, get back to your hotel room and have that conversation and, set the phone up, run off the local network service and away they go. I think it's, remote coaching is here to stay and will become a major part of the way that we do business. And of course you can do it now. That's the beauty of it. It's now.
Exactly. I know, for example, this morning, I've had 2 phone calls to Australia at 8 o'clock this morning. Done business in Australia, in Melbourne, in Queensland, it's so accessible now. It's crazy.
Yeah, you know, I mean, as you know, I mean, I've got clients all over the world, and you know, to know that we can make it work. All right, there's a few challenges logistically in the Middle East. There's, you know, restrictions, you know, in terms of video conferencing and stuff like that. But, you know, as I, you know, I think the governments will understand as well that, you know, business is being done. We can't move around freely and easily. You know, we're protecting folk, you know, open up the airways so that, you know, the business that is being done there can be done. Monitor it by all means, if that's the way you want to do it. You know, I'm not saying don't be political on it. You know, do what you've got to do to protect your national status and securities. But, you know, a golf lesson's a golf lesson at the end of the day. And, you know, if you want to monitor it, that's fine. But, you know, allow us to do the video conferencing there. It means that you're going to get your tourism business over there, you know, with the clients going out there to train and to practice, you know, and those countries that open it up will become hotbeds for, you know, I mean, I've seen some phenomenal facilities that are around the Middle East, Turkey, and, you know, and of course, at this time of the year, you've got the weather. So it's, you know, it's win-win, you know, and players are then going to come back ready for the summer, you know, hit the ground running early spring and, you know, be ready to go and do what they need to do, you know, during their, you know, pursuits of their careers going forward. So, yeah, the recreational golfer, when they get to understand that this is a real game changer, now coaching, you know, in your living room, in your office, on the practice ground, you know, yeah, we can't get and play on the practice ground. So go and do it in your backyard. You know, it doesn't take an awful lot to set up a backyard platform. If you haven't got a backyard and you've got your living room, you can work out of there and you work on your putting, you know. And so we've been doing putting and short game, you know, this last month, and it's working really nicely. So when will it be that the tour players start to do it? That's the thing.
Exactly, because at the end of the day as well, a lot of people are going to be seeing out there putting strokes that they might be tinkering with and manipulating. And the two I want to focus on is Xander Schauffele and Jordan Spieth, especially the left below right. What is this craze about left below right, Andy? Because working with you, I'm an orthodox Andy Gorman advocate, but there's so many people out there who are doing the left below right, and it just looks awkward to me.
Yeah, I mean, you've got left below right. Of course, you've got the pencil claws or whatever other types of grips, the split, the up the arm, you know, arm lock. I mean, all of these things. I think that will be, you know, I'd love to see the R&A nail that one. You know, they're masks. Ultimately, the grip change is a mask. The grip, the wrists are not breaking down. They're reacting to the problem. And the wrists are not the problem. You know, folks talk about it all the time. If you're catching us new, guys, look, I've been shouting this for 20 years. The wrists are not the problem. The length of the club, the posture of the body, those are the major factors. So if you're tall and the putter gets down to a certain length, you discriminated. And this is my shout out to the R&A and USGA. If you set a length on the putter, ultimately, it should be no more than a couple of inches above the wrist height. That's how you would restrict the length of the club, not up the arm. Up the forearm is not the way to go. All right, anchoring the putter up the forearm is not the way to go, because the fault isn't being fixed. Putters are ultimately too short, and because of that, posture is poor, and we're bent over the putter too far. When we take the spine with its natural curves, we've got outwards through the rib cage, inwards through the neck and the lumbar spine. When we that's called an extension of the spine. When we go into flexion, where we collapse over and we lose our height, you know, and we lose our sort of structure. And, you know, one of the reasons why I've got a neck problem right now is because I'm sat in front of a computer in poor posture for too long during the day. sat at the wrong, on the wrong chair, at the wrong height for too long, period. And that's where we are. So when we get into this forward flexion, we lose the curvature of the spine, which then facilitates over and bend over a little bit further, and they can't move. They get stuck. There's just nothing to free that up. The freedom is in the lumbar spine. Now, anybody who's teaching otherwise, I don't care who they are, how much they're recognized, it's wrong anatomically. And it's the anatomical principles that we need to adhere to, not golf principles. I don't care about golf principles. I only care about what your body's designed to do, because then it moves freely. You know, I'm watching guys like Tony Finau, and he frustrates the life out of me when the guy's using a 34-inch putter and he's 6'4". Get a grip. Your back must be killing you. All right. But then you can't get a grip because actually, if you want to stand up nice and tall, there's no club left. He had the right club in his hands a couple of weeks ago when he had it shoved up the forearm, but he was using it up the forearm instead of in his hands. Had he have used the right length of club and started to swing it more freely back and forward, it'd be so much easier. But how does he get to know that knowledge when the rest of the golf industry says, nah, you got to get your eyes over it. You've got to go into flexion, bend over the top, and, you know, allow your arms to hang and grip down on this club. I mean, you know, at what point is this reality going to become, you know, real to the players that actually then they're not being fixed, they're not being helped? I mean, it's only going to take a major shake-up of the industry, you know, to recognize that. I don't know where, you know, I don't know how we get that message out. We've been shouting a long time, and it's filtering, but it's, you know, how do we get it out there?
That kind of echoes for Dustin Johnson as well, doesn't it? Won this week at the Saudi International, but his putting for his standards was dreadful.
Oh, it is. And I mean, you know, Strokes Gain talked about the fact that, you know, for the first time, this guy's done something that hasn't been done in a long time, which is to win. Had it been a putting competition, I thought it was really great the way that it was put across. Had it been a putting competition, he'd have missed the cut, and yet he wins the tournament. So it shows you how good his long game is. But my question would be, and a lot of people go like, yeah, see, it's all about the long game. It's not about the short game. No, it's not. It's not, because he's the first person that's done it in a long, long time. It's all about the putting. Players play really well. They're the best players in the world. They do most things really, really well. And of course, there'll always be some at the back end of the field and some at the front end of the field. That's what, you know, that's what we pitch ourselves up against. And if a guy comes from the back of the field to the top of the field and the rest of his strong parts stay strong, you know, all of a sudden then, you know, he's in contention. And if he can cope with the pressure of being in contention, he can win. And, you know, what we've got to be mindful of is that a player that plays to the strengths all the time is also relying on their weakness not being too bad, but to be as bad as it was on greens that looked spectacular. I didn't see any reason. I don't want this to sound as bad as it's going to sound, but from what I'm hearing, the greens have been dug up at Emirates as we speak. They're all coming up because the greens were in such poor condition. They were not a spectacle to behold. The course was, but the greens weren't. They run really well, but they looked really poor. I've been on those greens, and they do look genuinely very, very good. They look different, but that's desert greens. It's a different type of grass. It's contending with different kinds of climate, you know, so it's always going to be. But there's a lot of patches on the Emirates greens, and so they've dug them up. Go across now to Saudi, and all of a sudden, you know, what a spectacular looking golf course. And again, 2 weeks earlier, we were out in Abu Dhabi, and the greens were spectacular there as well. So, you know, it's not because the surfaces are poor that you can then say, oh, you know, this is just down to, you know, people are missing putts because of poor surfaces. Because, you know, DJ just hit a lot of bad putts You
Yeah,
know,
because he was blaming the reeds, wasn't he? He said the reeds weren't very good.
well, he knows how to read, and the thing is, you know, we've talked about this on lives as well. You know, I'm sure it'll come up this afternoon when we get back out there. But you know, key is, you know, aim point is as, you know, it's just a great way to understand reading greens, and he does aim point with his brother. You know, they stand, they straddle, they get the feel for the line. You know, oh, and this putt's folding everybody. Well, why is it folding everybody? Is it that they're not factoring in the grain? Because it does have an effect. You know, are they expecting grain to be there that isn't there? In which case, it's not having the effect they're expecting it to have. And so there are misreads. And this is the thing. Misreads do happen. It's the human part of playing golf. You know, a little bit like playing a stock shot that you would normally hit and then topping it 100 yards down the fairway, like a 20 handicapper. All right. The difference
What did he do, though, Andy? What did he do?
Well, the difference between a 20 handicapper who would have thrown his clubs, cussed and, you know, stomped off like a petulant child, is that he gave his club back over to his caddy. His caddy cleaned it, put it back in the bag. They dealt with it on the next shot, dialed it in, and knocked the putt in for birdie. That's the difference between him, you know, and the 20 handicap, you know, plus handicapper, is that he, you know, he's flat out topped it on a reachable par 5 and still makes birdie. I mean, you know, it shows the character of the man. Would he have done that 10 years ago? Maybe not. But he's also dialed in his strengths to become his strengths. He dialed in his weakness to become a strength, which is his wedge play, his approach play. So even if he flat out tops a 4-iron or whatever club it was that he was using, you know, he then gets a wedge in his hand for his next shot and dials it in. And, you know, it's spectacular, the fact that he can go from such a catastrophic failure. You know, go back to the desert or the other side, the desert on the other side of the world. You know, in Arizona, we see a flat out top with a shot. His driver's been knocked in the water. Hahn, and you know, he's playing a shot from a side slope, which is now very questionable, with his longest club in his bag, apart from his driver, and flat out tops it into a cactus bush, you know, nigh on, and gets up and down from 40 yards out of a bunker, you know, to only drop one shot. But of course, he's now capitulating. You know, he's going from 6 under par for his round, you know, and very quickly within a couple of holes, he's back down to, you know, he's dropped 3 shots in 3 holes or something, you know, and all because, you know, trying to play the wrong shot, trying to do the wrong thing, you know, it becomes a real challenge. And I think, you know, that's for me. I think you've got to get to a place when you're very cool in your head, you know, to be able to play through the really bad shots. But the only way to play good golf is to be cool in the head. So that's, again, you see, you've got to get there to play consistently good golf all the time. So, but, you know, and DJ, I think, you know, I admire the fact that they've traveled. It's easy to travel when you're being paid. All right.
And you're on a private jet.
And you're on a private jet. And obviously there was a handful of the guys that did that. And they're good, they're featured. You know, I like the fact that, you know, they didn't just turn up for the money. They turned up and played good golf too, you know. And I'd love to have seen Tony Finau get one over the line. But, you know, I almost get to the point where at some exasperated point, are you going to deal with this putting issue? Everybody knows about it. Everybody talks about it and he's not dealing with it. You know, then ultimately, you know, what are you doing? You're just blinkering and, you know, blindly carrying on and just not doing anything about it and just blaming the greens or trying to change your putter or whatever it might be. Because it is the putter, but it's the fact that the putter doesn't fit him that's the problem. Then he can't get into good posture. Now he can't practice. You know, he doesn't know what he's trying to do. He's now, you know, complete confusion. You know, it's when you've got confusion, you've got, you know, how can you make a confident stroke? You can have, you know, and you can see you can get into waves of, you know, knocking putts in because you can. But when you're knocking putts in with your hands and not your body, you're always reliant on something that'll break down really quickly.
Why aren't they picking that up, Andy? Because I know he's not with the kind of mainstream putter he's with the putter manufacturer, but it's not a mainstream Toulon, Odyssey, TaylorMade. It's another company. So why aren't they picking up that the
Well,
fitting stage? Why haven't they got Sam, or they haven't got the kind of technology that
well,
you've got?
they may well have the technology. I'd be very surprised if they haven't. But what they've got is a single mindset on fitting. And so if you've got a putter fitting process that sits putters around 33, 34, and 35 inches, and you've got a guy of 6'5" walks into your studio, you've still got this blinkered mindset that this is how you're going to fit them. I'm trying to think of another sport that, I've said it before, shoe manufacturers, well, if your shoes aren't big enough, we'll cut the toes out so you can get your feet in. But that doesn't make it a shoe, makes it a sandal. All right. So, and if you're going to kick a ball with it, then you've got nothing to protect your toes. Now we've got a problem. And this is where we are with the industry. We're missing the toes, albeit it's not, of course, because it's the other end. We've chopped the club off at the knee, and we're trying to attach ourselves to it at the shin for the tall player. And that's the problem that we're dealing with. Literally, we've just chopped off a part of the leg, because that's what the shaft represents. And we're asking the player to go and attach themselves to the shin, not the thigh, of the club. So, that becomes a problem. It's then affects your posture, and it affects the way that it goes beyond the posture. Posture affects the physical capability of the movement of the spine and the chest movement from side to side, period. Then poor posture affects balance, albeit you're not about to fall over necessarily. That effect on the balance clouds the brain. It messes with the way that the brain processes or doesn't process the information that's required, i.e. speed, movement of direction to govern speed, et cetera, et cetera. So if the body can't move effectively, then you're trying to make it all up with the hands. And I don't know a single coach, swing, putting or otherwise, who says, use your hands to putt. Everybody's saying, use your big muscles, use the big part of your body, the big muscles, the big structure, to move the club. They're right, but they don't know how to. And that's where we get to, I think I might be getting a bit passionate about this. But, thanks for flicking the switch. But this is it, and I get infuriated by the lack of knowledge, but that's naivety. Ignorance is saying it don't work like that, Andy. That's ignorance, because they've chosen to ignore the advice and the lack of knowledge brought on by naivety. You're still guilty of breaking the law if you don't know the speed limit is 30 mile an hour, having just left a 70 mile an hour zone. If you didn't realize it because the sign had been knocked down or whatever, it's still 30 mile an hour zone, even if there isn't a sign there. Now, you could argue that and you might get away with a cautions against a fine and a fine instead of points, but you still broke the law because the law says you must be driving at 30 in that particular area. The fact that you're naive to that doesn't mean that you're not breaking the law. But now if you do it next time around, the copper pulls you over and says, hold on a minute, I pulled you over before. Now you're ignorant to the law. Now I'm going to slap the book at you and I'm going to ban you for reckless driving as well. He can throw the book at you because you've been ignorant towards it. And I think there's still a lot of naivety around. And that's why the manufacturers are being ignorant towards it, because they know. But the manufacturers shouldn't be the one necessarily that tells a tour player the putter you're using is wrong. What he needs is a good team around him that says, actually, you know what, this is what we're now studying. This is now what we're observing. This is now what we've heard. This is a guy we've heard about, right? Maybe you need to go and be confident in the knowledge that, the rest of the team's not going to be sacked off because you bring in new knowledge. That new knowledge can be contracted, for a period. But ultimately, start looking for new knowledge, start looking for the answers, because it hasn't been exhausted, so, if all of a sudden Andy gets a few calls, a few players understand a little bit more. It's the tall fellas that I'm shouting out to. The little fellas need to be mindful as well. He's a little fella, but haven't got the back of the tall fellas. But ultimately, this little fella here at 5'8.5" is understanding because he was shoved into a putter that was too short as well. And that's where my understanding, I had to fail before I could succeed. you know, and some people only succeed or appear to, you know, so, you know, they don't go through the mix, you know, of missing lots and lots and lots of putts. You know, they just don't hold as many as they think they should do, but they're not necessarily missing them. I was missing them, as you know, and that's where we need to sort of step out from, you know, there's only so much you can do. You can't solicit, you're not allowed to solicit players. You know, if you go and solicit players through the managers, it falls on deaf ears because the managers aren't interested, which they should be, because, you know, the better the player, the more marketable value they've got. So you've got managers of players who are, you know, not listening because they're choosing not to, because it's not my position to do so. If your player is complaining about the putting, or stats or commentators are complaining about it, start looking for the solution, because he ain't where you're looking at this point in time. And you don't have to be the best putting coach and only work on tour. As good as the putting coaches are, they don't have all the answers. They work with what they've got and they make good of what they have with the knowledge they have. But not everybody's got the answers. You know, I've seen it in Formula One. You know, many, many years ago, a friend of mine understood a fault that was set up in the Williams gearbox. He understood the fault. He shared the fault. But he was a DIY mechanic, but knew the gearbox inside out because it was a derivative of another gearbox. And he'd worked out how to change the gears internally when you're rebuilding it in double quick time. And Williams didn't even give him a thank you for it. You know, but they gained the knowledge from somebody outside the industry. It was a, you know, DIY mechanic. And oftentimes it's the DIY manufacturer, the DIY mechanic, these guys that have the best solutions, and the engineering tech and know-how don't have it. They just have the qualifications that get them into the position. A lot of things have changed because computer design and the like changes things up a little bit easier now. But back in the day, when you're dealing with a mechanical issue, you know, sometimes it was the guy who was doing it on this, you know, on a pair of ramps stuck up on a pair of bricks, stopping the thing from rolling off the ramps, you know, in the makeshift way. They were the guys that had actually worked out how to do things easier.
We've got a busy week going into this week. The picture behind me gives it away where we are in America. The European Tour's got a week off. They're back for the World Golf Championship in a couple of weeks. But what are your thoughts on Pebble, Andy? Is that a course that you'd love to go and visit and play?
It is very much so. You know, it's an iconic golf course. It's not a links. It's right on the ocean, but it's not a links course. And, you know, yeah, it's, for me, I mean, you know, my first remembrance of Pebble was Tom Watson chipping in to beat, was it Nicholas? It was Nicholas, wasn't it? In 81, can't remember, around that sort of time. And, you know, to chip in at the 17th there, when I was watching it the other day, actually, it popped up on I think it was a Rolex ad. And, you know, I was like, oh, dear me, that ball's 6-8 feet past the hole if he doesn't hit the flag as plumb as he does. You know, and of course, that was the second time that Watson had done Nicholas in you know, relatively recent years. And it was his only US Open, you know, and, you know, then Tom Kite in 91, you know, against Monty, you know, just trawling it out there, you know, and the weather turned and, you know, but he managed to get it in there and, you know, wins the event. And of course, Tiger in 2000, you know, I know we're not playing US Opens, but, you know, winning by 15 shots, and how different the golf course is at this time of the year versus the summer, a little bit like we were talking about Torrey Pines last week. You know, hard and bouncy, you know, firm, we can get the grasses up. You know, this time of the year, it's going to be wet, damp. You know, saw Tiger coming back from 7 shots back from 10 to playing in this event. I think it was in 2000 as well. And, you know, winning the Open, then the US Open, then, you know, in the June by 15. So there's lots of things I think we can, you know, sort of remind ourselves of, you know, all the time. And of course, Graham McDowell, 2010. So it's it is a great piece of golfing landscape. And of course, the iconic image of the hole behind you, number 7, 100-yard wedge shot that can play a 3-iron, depending on the wind. For the mere mortals, of course, not for the tour player. But I've seen tour players hit 6-irons into that. So, and a flick with a wedge that's ended up in the ocean. So you literally can go anything. And I think the players like the fact that you can do anything, because we like a bit of a giggle, albeit we don't like to do it with the scorecard in our hands on Thursday through Sunday. But, certainly if the wind blows Tuesday, and Wednesday, it's, becomes a lot of fun. I think Pebble, it would be on most people's bucket list, given half a chance. It certainly is on mine.
No amateurs this week, so it's just
no. It is normally a pro-am, isn't it? Yeah, and I think that's a shame. But again, I understand the reasons why, we're having to do that, and we're having to do that to protect the golfers whose livelihoods it is. And we'll get back to pro-ams as and when. But it would normally be significant pro-am. And are they mixing up the format? Are they still playing the different courses, or is it just Pebble?
I'm not sure, and I'll check that out. I'm not sure.
Yeah, because it's always been Spyglass and I think the other one there. It's 3 courses that they would play on the first 3 days, and then they'd all play those that have qualified. A little bit like we do with our Dunhill links. We then get the last round at Pebble, so everybody plays Pebble twice, and the cut's made after 3 rounds, isn't it? So it's Spyglass. Oh dear me, Cypress Point, another great golf course. So 3 great courses there, and of course, if you're going to do the Monterey Peninsula, then you would have to do those 3 courses, and I think you'd need to probably borrow about $10,000 to go and do it. So I think a round of golf at Pebble's about £600, isn't it? About $800. So
a lot of money. A lot of money. It's one of those that there's some golf courses you do that for, because it's like you say, it's the bucket list, it's box ticked. And I did that for Valderrama. I think that green fee was €350, which was ridiculous. I didn't pay that, thank goodness, for my PGA membership, but it was a lot of money.
Yeah, no, I think it's there are a handful of golf courses, around, and that we would love to get the opportunity to play. Travel is going to be the biggest challenge over that, completing those bucket lists. So yeah, but definitely Pebble would be there. So, of course, you're about to do St Andrews, aren't you?
What we should have been, it should have been actually next week. Should have been going up next week, but because of COVID and everything else.
Oh, I thought they're still playing golf. You're not allowed to travel up, is that?
No, yeah, exactly. Just because of the local restrictions and things, I should have been up there next week with a colleague. But we've put it until next year. This time next year, so we're going to be playing the 28th of February next year. So it's been all moved and things. But that's nature of the beast. Nature of the beast.
Yeah, I thought you got a bit quiet on it. I hadn't forgot you were going, you see. So it's like, talking about iconic courses, St Andrews and Pebble Beach, there'd be 2, crikey, don't get much more diverse, really. Lush and green, and then, freezing cold. Mind you, it's also covered in 6 inches of snow at the minute. So
yeah, exactly. It'll be better next year. But hey, I've been lucky enough. I played it a couple of times. I played it for my dad's 40th and for my 21st. So it was a special place.
Did you miss all the bunkers?
To be honest, I wasn't bad. I think I went in 3 on the first kind of time I went up with my dad, and then I think I went in 1 on the second time. But they were both in kind of winter conditions, so it was I think it was March and October. But it was one of those kind of pinch yourself experience. I shanked it off the first with a 3-iron, nearly knocked it out of bounds when I played with my dad, just because of the nerves. I kind of pegged it up. I looked around me.
I would never have hit a 3-iron.
I know. Don't know why I did that.
I can remember standing up in my first Open qualifying, just turned pro, 1990, and I've got a Ping Eye 1-iron, and it was my go-to club. I could hit it anywhere, and I'm standing in the Open qualifying regional rounds. One round, get through into final qualifying. So, it's the shootout battle at that point. So I, going out, not expecting anything, stand on the first tee, got the one iron out. I've hit one iron there since I was about 15. So, teeing it up, and I remember hearing, gentlemen, your tee time is due. Are you ready? Yep, that's fine. Yeah. So on the tee from John Ray Golf Centre, Andy Gorman. So I've turned round and one iron's ready. I've turned round and I'm looking at this one. I put the one iron down. I hadn't teed the ball up at this point in time. Put the one iron down just to have a practice swing, and I think that looks a bit small, that does. And the first hole is, the tee's elevated. You go down in a little bit of a dip. The 9th green is in the dip below you. To the right of the 9th green, as you look, is a pond, which is in front of the 9th green as you play in this 200-yard shot over water. And then the third tee's in this view here, and it's all very on the right-hand side of me. I've got this one iron, which now has a neck that's getting about that big. So I thought, I'll get my driver out and pull the head cover off the driver. I've turned to my dad, who's caddying for me, and my dad's there trying to light a cigarette. He's only caddying for me. He can't even light his cigarette. He's that nervous. I'm like, you're making me feel comfortable. Get the head cover off, smacks this ball down, and the adrenaline of it, this old block of wood driver, 43 inches, I've knocked this thing down that fairway about 320 yards, and I could kick it on the front of the green. Anyway, I managed to chip it onto the front of the green. The pin was at the back, but I did make a 4. But it was, talk about the nerves, of realizing the first stages of an ambition, and just getting first tee nerves. So I'm with you, but you see, wisdom says don't hit the smallest head to hit on the club. So try and get on the ball. But the thing is, you can't hit driver either.
No, exactly. I was 20. My dad was really nervous before on the putting green, and he had the sensible option of getting his hybrid out. So he had his 5 hybrid down there and just a lovely little shot. But I don't know what I was thinking, 3 iron. Well,
you're thinking Seve, 3 iron, classic, bang, knock it down the fairway. But of course, Seve can find the flat part of the club and you can't. So.
Exactly.
So in the Open Championships, I'm not so sure Seve hit iron very often down there, to be honest. I think he hit 3-wood most of the time. He wasn't afraid of getting close to the water either. That's what I did notice. It's it would only be a flick with a 5 iron down there if if it was really howling. And of course, he can howl down there. But and just flick one up on the wind and let it bounce down the fairway. But it's a really interesting tee shot. It's not a course that I've played, but I've walked it, numerous times and. Jumped in the bunkers and gone like, whoa, how do you get out of that?
Yeah, it's just so open. That was the point. I think it was just so wide open, and people kept saying to me, "Oh, it's nearly 200 yards wide. You can't miss that." I'm like, I think I nearly can.
It's 120, I think, if I remember right.
Is that what it is?
But,
wow.
But didn't Ian Baker Finch knock it out of bounds during the Open? So I think he knocked it down the 18th, didn't he? And folk have hit it out past the first, over the first from the 18th tee as well, thinking it was the right thing to do, and then get it a little bit hooky, and it just keeps running. So it is wide open. It's the widest fairway you'll ever attempt to hit, but it's also you can miss it because down the right hand side of both of those is the best lines, and of course that's right next to the out of bounds fence. But interesting memories. But it'll be interesting to see who pulls the win out of the bag. I just hope that we can see Jordan Spieth return to form, continue. Guys will be jumping out of the Middle East and back over to the States now, which will be good. They're few quid in their back pockets, and trophy obviously for DJ, so that's good. And I think that's where I think golf's in a good place, and I think the fact that golf's managing to play a lot of itself now is good as well. So looking forward to the season continuing to build and just getting us back out onto the golf course now, because it's about time. We know that we cannot put ourselves at any more risk being on the golf course. There's no reason for golf courses to be closed, none whatsoever. because if you can go and walk in the park and bump into 10,000 people walking in the park, then you can go around a golf course which will have no more than sort of 50, 60, 70 people on it. So we should be out there playing golf, and getting to meet with folk and keeping our minds more sane, and be mindful that as much as what we're doing here is bringing a little bit of frivolity and talking about what we can see with the best players in the world, if you're missing your playing partners and you can't get out and speak to them, maybe have a walk around the park with them, but pick up the phone, because there's a lot of people missing that contact with humans, and it's a good place to go. So, by all means do that. And, check out Rick Shields as well. Rick's got a podcast going on at the moment, a pod, and also he's, I think he's doing live walks around these local
Walk 18.
Walk 18.
Really good.
And, he's doing that. And, he's raising some money for charity Mind. It's a difficult time. It is not easy being isolated. And this is why it's important. Go and have a look and see what Rick's doing. And, we'll have a reach out to Rick as well. But, he's raising charity, and he's got a Just Giving page for Mind. So go and check that out and see what he's doing. But if you're missing your playing partners, pick up the phone and maybe go and have a walk down the local park. And take your clubs with you, but don't take a golf ball. When anybody asks the question, just say, we're exercising with our clubs on our back, because we need to get together. Stay together, stay safe, and we'll catch up with you next time.